This occupation is illegal, and it's illegal for all of the reasons I have mentioned: the ongoing violation of the right to self-determination, the prolonged nature of the occupation, the settlements and the annexation. The ICJ says regarding the law as it applies to Israel and what violations of the law has occurred. The settlements are illegal, the violation of self-determination is illegal, the annexation is illegal. Does that make Israel an unlawful occupier? It doesn't quite get to the point that it says that. On Friday, the International Court of Justice will issue a legal opinion as to the status of Israel's occupation and its racial discriminatory legislation and practices in Occupied Palestinian Territory. Now, this is going to be an incredibly important pronouncement. Even though it is not legally binding, we will know now what the ICJ says regarding the law as it applies to Israel and what violations of the law has occurred. Really, the issue before the court is whether the ongoing denial, the ongoing violation of the Palestinian right to self-determination through a prolonged occupation. Occupations in international law are supposed to be temporary. You're not meant to have a forever occupation, which has lasted over 75 years now, as well as the fact that you have settlements and an annexation of territory, and you've also altered the demographic composition of the holy city of Jerusalem. What does that mean in terms of the nature of that occupation? Is it now an illegal occupation? And the second prong of that is also the racial discriminatory practices and legislation that Israel has put in place. Does that amount to apartheid? And what flows from that question, and really what is going to be at the crux of this legal opinion, is what are the legal consequences which flow from this, from such a pronouncement, to the international community as a whole. Now, what a lot of international lawyers, such as myself, want out of this decision is for the ICJ to say, this occupation is illegal, and it's illegal for all of the reasons I have mentioned: the ongoing violation of the right to self-determination, the prolonged nature of the occupation, the settlements and the annexation, and that Israel is an apartheid state. So you have an unlawful occupier and an apartheid state. And what that means is that the international community now has to come together to bring all of that to an end. Now, we've had a similar pronouncement such as that in Namibia in 1970, where they held that South Africa was unlawfully occupying Namibia and Southwest Africa, and it was an apartheid regime. That was really a bedrock. It was a foundation. It was a real important stepping stone on the route to de-apartheid, to the end of apartheid of South Africa. It took 20 years from then, but that was the ICJ ruling that was increasingly cited in terms of getting to that point. And we're hoping that now we see that in 2024. The last ruling by the ICJ was on the construction of a wall in occupied territory in 2004. Now the General Assembly has come back to the ICJ asking for a pronouncement on a much broader issue, which is Israel's occupation of Palestinian territory as a whole. 50 states went before the ICJ in public hearings in February, telling them what they believe that the law is and how it applies here. The vast majority of those states said Israel is occupying illegally and it is an apartheid state. You had a handful of states, predominantly Western ones, which didn't agree, which said that violations have occurred, particularly in the settlements, but this is not the right forum, this is not the right way for us to bring the occupation to an end. So really what I'm seeing is that this ICJ opinion could go one of two ways. The first way is that the ICJ will say, Israel is an illegal occupier and it is an apartheid regime, and the international community must now come together to bring that to an end. I feel like perhaps this is more likely given the context. You cannot divorce judgments from the context in which they're taking place. The other way in which this may go is also, though, quite likely, which is that the ICJ comes close, but it shies away from giving that ruling. So it says that the settlements are illegal, the violation of self-determination is illegal, the annexation is illegal. Does that make Israel an unlawful occupier? It doesn't quite get to the point that it says that. It also says that the racial discriminatory practices are unlawful. But does it amount to apartheid? It doesn't pronounce on that issue. It could go one of two ways. It can't really go a third way, which is that they say that Israel's occupation is fine and there's nothing wrong with it. That's not a likely option at this stage. but it is about how far the court will go. And we'll have to wait till Friday, but I do hope that it will pick the former option, and that we will also, in the same way as with South Africa, we will see this as a major, major pivotal moment where we really saw it as a galvanizing moment for the international community to try and bring this occupation to an end.